Well, welcome back, Lindsay. Well, actually, you've not been here, so welcome back, everybody else, to What Drives You. I am Carl Bauer, one of the co-hosts, and Lindsay is probably going to be a potential co-host down the road for the channel. But welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you, Carl. Excited to be here.
I am glad we finally were able to connect. So we've tried
Yes.
just for a while, everybody, just to connect, but she's a busy woman and travel, and I've been on traveling like the last 3 weeks like crazy. So finally we were able to get this little nugget of time to have a conversation. So welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
Today, I would like to talk about just kind of what drives you, maybe not necessarily career, but we will talk about career, but more about what drove you to get into a very male dominated business like automotive. So
Yeah.
um, I know you and I have known each other a long time, but maybe kind of walk us through how you went from college into, I think it was some recruiting stuff, and then how you got into your big job that you just recently left.
Yeah. So I kind of joke and say that I was made for the auto industry for being a female. It's a tough industry, but I feel like I've been successful in it and I have thick skin. So it's kind of been like a perfect fit for me. Um, I was in college and it was my last semester of college. I met one of the executives at the auto group that I was working at just a party that I was a guest at, networked, and I ended up getting an internship. I should start by saying is I grew up in dealerships. So my dad was in the car business. His dad was in the car business. It goes back kind of generations in all different facets. Like my grandpa worked for General Motors in the plants. My dad and uncle sold cars. So I've been very familiar with this industry. Um, and so kind of just formulated naturally. Like I had no intention of actually going into automotive. But like I said, I met somebody at my previous employer and became an intern in their recruiting and training department. And I was going to school for advertising and PR. So I finished up college. They offered me a full-time position with the auto group at a corporate level. So that was super exciting for me. And it was great because I was in the automotive industry, but I was not really like in the trenches yet. I was definitely bringing value to the stores, helping them hire like top talent. I was really branding and selling the auto group. And then one of my stores came to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for like a marketing manager, somebody to do some grassroots marketing, customer relations, this, that, and the other." And I was ready for a new challenge. I'd been doing the recruiting for about a year and a half. And I went home and I remember calling that GSM back later and saying, "Well, hey, I went to school for that. I could do it. Like, would you consider me?" He's like, "Yeah." So I found my replacement for the recruiting department. Had to hire my own replacement, but that's okay. Did that. And then, yeah, I took on one of the largest stores in the auto group and I was their marketing manager. I started sitting in all these meetings with their advertising company and I kind of knew what they were talking about, kind of didn't, users, clicks, bounce rate, all this stuff. So I went and got Google Analytics certified, Google AdWords certified. Then I went back to the GSM and I was like, "Hey, look what I did." He was shocked. He was like, you just did that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I wanted to know what we were talking about."
Right.
Um, and then the rest just kind of happened. I, started speaking up in the meetings. And once I realized I knew what I was talking about, I started, really giving input. And then I just took on all of the marketing and advertising and then BDC departments and just kind of grew and grew.
Do you think that's a great story? Do you think if your dad and grandpa and all those, if you didn't feel like somewhat safe and comfortable, that you'd have felt that way and felt comfortable enough to kind of just step in there? Because whenever I talk to my daughters about it, and both of them a little bit, they're like, even though they've been in there and they've even come to work, come to work with dad type of deal, they have zero interest in being around, 99% men.
So yeah, if I didn't have that experience, I don't know if I would have been. I probably would not have been so eager to jump into working at a store. I probably would have stayed a little more hands off from like the actual retail day to day and maybe stayed at more of a corporate level. Um, but because I was very familiar with dealerships. So to me, it just kind of came naturally. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, I think once you get in there, and that's even, now my girls have met, probably like you too, you meet people who you don't even know are in the car business. You're like, oh, they're pretty normal and nice and, not overbearing. And then you're like, oh,
Hmm.
wait a minute. They run a store, they own a store, they whatever, and they're more comfortable with it. So I think maybe as time goes by, because again, as I've talked about in other episodes, you can make a really good living in automotive. Um,
Make a great living.
and so I was doing a little research, a little prep for our conversation, and just kind of looking at not to get too granular in dollars and cents and how much we make in our business and stuff, but I want people to know, especially women, to know that there is a good opportunity in the car business, but it's still just in America, Lindsay. I don't know if maybe you know this stat. Only about 12% of working women make over $100,000 a year, as
Wow. I didn't.
opposed as opposed to men, who is about 25%.
Wow.
So that makes a little bit of sense because, if you choose to be, a stay-at-home mom or whatever, it's just mathematically, they're the ones who usually are the caregivers at home. But
Mhm.
for you, I think in automotive, and you've proven this out, right? If you're good and smart and talented as a female, you are such a rare commodity in automotive that you can make more than an apples to apples man, because there's
Mhm.
a million men, right? And we want that other perspective, because I think the stat is still women influence over 50% of the car buying and car payments when it comes to buying cars. So
Yeah. Biggest objection is I have to go home and talk to my wife.
that is one of the big ones. So
Interesting stat to share with you is
hmm,
the auto group I came from, 20% of our leadership were female.
huh,
So that's pretty low
yeah,
considering there was 2,800 employees. And that's in like a manager position.
right, right. Yeah, and that's the blessing and the curse, right? We can talk to that a little bit too if you want. Did you ever feel in the role, like, because you moved up pretty fast? I met you when you
I
were just
did.
running that one store, and then you ended up
Yeah.
running 9 or 10 of them, or overseeing them, marketing budgets, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I mean, big budgets. I mean, you were maybe talk to that across the, was it 9 or 10 you ended up overseeing?
I had 10 storefronts,
Okay, so on
15 months.
average, what was their average advertising marketing budget?
Probably 75,000. And that might be a little low for the average. No, probably about 70, 75 for the average. Yeah.
That's 750 a month, which is almost $10 million ad budget that you were overseeing
Yeah.
as a young, I mean, very smart, talented, but it was a young person to drive traffic for. Because I bet you of those 10 stores, there was probably also almost 1,000 employees that were relying on you and your strategies to drive traffic to sell
Mm-hmm.
cars and service cars, right? So big job
Mm-hmm.
for a young
Yeah.
person. Was
Yeah.
it stressful?
It was. It was. High, low lows, but that's what kind of made it fun too, is, you're always like you're chasing that rush, you're chasing that high of being successful, having a record breaking month, and the challenges that come along with it. Challenges of managing people. That to me is the most stressful job, or stressful part of the job, is the managing all the different personalities. I mean, at one point, I think I had 9 different general managers, 8 BDC managers, another 6 or so controllers that are managing my budgets that I'm sending them, and they want answers on things. So it's a lot of different dynamics that you navigate. Um, I think I did a pretty good job without, being too,
You did?
but just to manage the personalities, and knowing, this general manager likes things this way and this one likes things this way, and tailoring what I was doing, and even just how I was communicating information to them, knowing how they will receive it. That was a big thing. I couldn't necessarily send, I did reporting every Monday, and every Monday they got every GM and BDC manager and a few GSMs or whoever else wanted to be would receive an email of their weekly performance from the previous week. And even just sending that, I knew there were certain GMs that were going to read it and that I had to send some call outs in it with, hey, I noticed this was down, but don't worry, we've already made these changes and we're working on it for this week. But I also knew there were some GMs that never even looked at it. And so when they would call me, 3 days later, like, hey, what's going on with this? Like, well, it was in your Monday email, but I was expecting that. So I knew how to handle it and communicate it back to them, I guess.
Yeah. What was the favorite part of your job and the least favorite part of your job?
Favorite part, I think, was really when I could really dive into the strategy and I had, a team that was, excited to try new things. I was, gosh, 70% of my life were Zoom calls with vendors
Yeah,
finding that secret, tool that can help us increase conversions and leads and sales. So I think when I, got something new or I had a GM that was like, I want to try all the new stuff and really had that opportunity to be creative and come up with these, kind of out of the box things. One year we had like the Raminator at our CDJR store, which was so off the wall. And we used to do events with, rescues and really being able to do that stuff and execute it was a lot of fun. And that was probably my favorite. Of course, breaking records and selling a ton of cars. There were a few months we sold 450 cars at a store. That was so fun to be a part of. And that was everybody hands-on involved. That was a lot of fun. The hardest part, managing the people and the personalities. And
yeah,
when there'd be times where we tried something new and the GM or whoever was really the, decision maker was like, yeah, I don't see the result. I'm not feeling it here and I want to cut it. And it's like, well, it's actually working, but you got to look at it this way, and sometimes I had one GM that used to always tell me, like, you just geeked out. I don't know what you said, because I would get so in the weeds because of like the KPIs and this and that. And well, it's optimizing and the algorithm. And like, some of these GMs, some managers, they don't understand that part of it. So that was probably the biggest challenge is, managing the people in the BDC departments, which are tough, but also just really showing the GMs or the managers, whoever that may be, the value of a product and whether it was there or not.
for sure. Yeah, I always tell people the car business is amazing and fun and awesome when it's going good, and when it's
Oh yeah.
not, it's like being in jail.
Yeah.
You know,
And they, when I was in BDC, it's like, if they have a great month, it's not because of BDC. If they have a bad month, it's because of BDCs.
of course, of course. And for those of you who are listening in who don't know automotive, the BDC is a business development center. Basically, that's just a bunch of people pounding the phones to either for customer service or for answering questions or for setting appointments to get business into the dealership. So very integral part of automotive. It's funny because that and my friend Ken, who and I have this conversation all the time about, that's one of the most important roles at a dealership, and that's our least paying, highest turnover job. Just because it stinks. I
Mhm.
mean, you're just dialing for dollars all day long.
It's tough. Yeah, you're just sitting
So,
at a computer for 8 to 12 hours.
yep. And hang up, hang up, hang up, no answer, all that. And then documenting all your efforts too is hard because, you know, as right? Left message, hang up, wrong number, just all
Mhm.
that stuff. So it's a little bit of chasing a needle in a haystack too, to find that person who's really ready to buy and really interested in buying. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit too, is just close rates at a dealership. At my store before my current job, you know pre-COVID, right? Pre-COVID, you were doing good if you could get a hold of the people 50% of the time, get them in off their appointment 50% of the time, and then close the deal 50% of the time. Some of those ratios got whacked because of COVID, because when there was no cars, it was pretty much, if they showed up, they were buying a car. So it was almost 100%,
Mhm.
90% of the time. So what, in your stores, what were some of your benchmarks or KPIs, as you mentioned earlier, that you'd like to see and achieved?
Yeah. So from like an internet closing percentage standpoint, so just your internet leads based off vehicles sold, the industry benchmark is like 12 or 10 to 12%. It might be a little bit higher now, but and I was in two different markets. So I was in, the Chicagoland market, which was super competitive, and then the Wisconsin market, which is not so competitive. So my Chicagoland stores, if I saw 6% on some of their closing percentages, that was actually okay. You know, where in Wisconsin, because everybody was in the same boat. It's not like it was an anomaly of one store was only closing at, 6% and another store, everybody else was at 10. But like my Wisconsin stores in that market, it was higher. They were, closer to that 10 or 12%. But with the internet department, with BDC, we tracked those KPIs really closely. So industry benchmark for percentage of leads set to an appointment is 35%. Well, our teams were held to a 40% standard, which most always was achievable. And then from there, your percentage of, appointments shown industry, I think is 50-ish%. We held at 60%. Which that varied. That totally varied all over the place, and we tracked this weekly. So just like I did a lead report, our BDC departments had a whole BDC spreadsheet that they would do too. And because if you're not tracking something, then you have no idea how things are. It would drive me nuts when somebody didn't do their reports and then they'd come to me with their problems and I'd say, well, what's this person doing? Well, I don't know. Well, where's your report say? I didn't do it. Well, then there's no conversation to be had yet, But yeah, so percentage of appointments shown about 60%, which it varied, but for the most part, we would range between 45 and 60%. Again, kind of depended on the time of year, the market and the brand. And then closing percentage from there, it's funny, I read a statistic of percentage of appointments shown off internet should close at, I think it was like 60 or 80%. Like it was really high. We were averaging about 45%, which I felt like was okay. Yeah, I would have loved for, 70% of our appointments from internet leads to come in and sell, but we just didn't see that kind of return. So about 45%, I would say, would be the actual close rate of appointments from like a BDC department based off their internet leads.
Right. Well, and
track that.
Yeah, but like you say, you can't measure what you can't track. So tracking is key in a lot of these things, and the tools that you guys have, which is amazing these days in the CRM and the DMS
Well,
realm.
the CRM and now too, which I don't think people utilize enough, is a lot of these, third parties that the dealers are paying thousands of dollars for, they have all their dashboards. And a lot of them have things in there where you can see so much of your customer journey that you can't see in your CRM. So you can, you're alerted when your customers come back to your website and you can see every vehicle they looked at. And I think that's really underutilized information where if you really want to be successful and use all of your tools, you've got to use all the tools. And those backends can really, dashboards can really make a difference too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the customer journey where people fall off, and that's a whole other topic of impressions, positioning on the page, SEO, SEM, all that stuff, which we won't bore the world with there.
Oh, I'd love to.
I love diving into some of that stuff, but seeing when people fall out in a journey just by changing, the number of fields they have to fill in to get attention from a store, get a call back. We did a lot of that stuff at TrueCar, because TrueCar, you could change the dial a little bit and affect the bottom funnel, what came out as far as qualified leads or introductions, as they call them, or referrals, versus just opening the floodgates. To your point, anyone can generate all kinds of crazy leads or opportunities or phone calls, but if they're not qualified, again, all your ratios that you had set these bars and these KPIs for can be screwed up. Anyone can put up, and you see it all the time, right? This could be in any industry. If you misprice something, it's going to get a zillion phone calls or emails or texts like, hey, I want that. Well, either I mispriced it and there was an error, sorry, or I did the test and that car sold and created an unreasonable amount of leads, opportunities, phone calls, and all that. But the car's already gone, and I can't replace that car. So Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm sure, and maybe again, that's a great. I would not change my. I learned so much from my 30 years in automotive, specifically though owning my own store. But would you? What would you have done differently now, knowing you spent what 8, 10 years at this particular group?
10 years. Yeah.
10 years. What would you have told yourself, young Lindsay, versus now experienced Lindsay? What would you say you would have done differently?
Ooh, one thing I would have done differently is I had an opportunity to really build a team. And I think I fell a little bit short on setting them up for success and really, I kind of got into this where like I was so busy, it was hard to even take time to continue to learn for myself, train my team members that were directly, that were on the marketing team, really like train them to be the beast that they could have been. I know that sounds really bad to say, but uh, in the sense of like, but I feel like I just was so busy. There was only like so much time I could give to that.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe I guess, I think I could be more organized. You can always, manage your time better. Um, I
Well,
think
delegate, right? Just
yes, yeah. I mean, that was probably my biggest weakness is delegating because I get nervous if I give somebody else a task and I didn't tell them how to do it or they don't know that they're not, it's on me. Like I take everything, it's all going to come back to me. And I take that really seriously. And so I was, probably didn't delegate as much as I should have.
yeah. Well, it's hard because you're trying to prove yourself, especially in your role where you're like, okay, I got this huge opportunity. I'm making great money here. I cannot fail. It's
Right.
hard to pass that trust over to somebody else. There's a
Yeah.
great book that I read some years ago called Multipliers, and basically, it's the premise is, especially, and you can relate to this 100%, which is you're working with a lot of entry level people, right? You don't
Mhm.
know, the turnover is massive. You don't know who's going to make it. So to invest time in somebody who's probably not going to be there in the next 6 months is really hard to do. But
Yeah.
their premise is in this book, always hire people that are better, stronger, faster, smarter than you. Surround yourself with those people. And the multiplier fact is they're always going to, because think about it, you, Lindsay, if someone, if you hire somebody faster, smart, faster, stronger, smarter, more hardworking, they're probably going to want to surpass you, right? So we're probably not going to have them on our team in these roles in our community for very long, unless they replace us. So
Mhm.
the point was always be filling your benches, because the people that are like you, they're going to want to surpass you. Well, so unless you want to move on, you got to let them go. Hey, thank you for that 2, 3, 4 years I had with you. God bless, move on, and I wish you success.
Yeah, absolutely. What do they say too? You want to hire your replacement?
It's
So
another
you're
one.
always ready for more opportunity.
So you had this 10 years, you worked from, which I forgot you were an intern. So intern up to, you know, top dog in the region as far as the marketing side of things. Why did you leave?
So I felt like I hit the ceiling. I wasn't there there wasn't much more for me to I didn't see a lot more opportunity for me to grow. Also paid search and SEO and SEM has always been like kind of my passion and what I really like. I love nothing more than getting on a call or with our provider and digging into why this campaign isn't optimizing, why it's not working. Let's shift budget here. Let's change our geos here. And like the strategy part of it was really exciting for me, which again is so lame and dorky, but something for everybody. And there was an opportunity available to work with a company, L2T Media, who I'm with now. And they had a regional sales director position available. And I just saw it as a great opportunity. I worked with them on the other side. So I knew, I knew a lot about the company. I felt good about who, the owners were, the leadership there. Everybody there has a really long tenure. And it just seemed like a good fit and the right time for me to make a move to continue to grow my career and learn more and learn the other side of the business and be able to help more dealers optimize. There's so many companies out there that just, they sign on a dealer and then it's like, okay, they might have a monthly call, but they never follow up. They never do anything more. And again, that's what excites me and that's what I like to do. So if I had the opportunity to do it all day long, why not?
Do you think, this is a two-part question. If there had been an opportunity for you to move up at your old organization, would you have stayed? And the second part of that is, if this company, L2T, was not partially female owned, do you think you'd have gone to them, or you think, because I think that's always a nice thing to know, like,
Yeah,
hey man, one of the owners is a
she's
lady,
female.
right? She can relate.
Mhm.
So sorry, that was two at once.
No, I would have maybe stayed a little bit longer to see if that role was in my future. The problem I felt is I kept asking if there was going to be more opportunity. I asked for a roadmap, something to achieve for, and I wasn't getting any response or anything back. Um, so, I mean, if there was a role and I knew I had a shot at maybe the opportunity, then yes, I probably would have, because I really enjoyed what I did. And I met so many great people working there too. I mean, I have a handful of people that I talk to still on a daily basis that are my dear friends that I met working there. So,
Yeah.
but then yes, knowing that one, the owner's a female and a majority of their leadership is female.
Mm,
And so, my director of sales is a female, the director of marketing is a female, there's quite a few, and they've all been with this company for 12 to 18 years. I think they've only been open 17, so 12 to 17 years.
yeah. Yeah.
But since the beginning. So knowing that, really, it did help my decision as well.
No, it's good. And I mean, you're right. There's a comfort level. You worked with them for many years as a provider. They provided good service.
Mhm.
It's also interesting that one of the founders, her family owns dealerships, so she's got that kind of that same background as you, from growing up in the business. So comfort level and lack of fear, maybe,
Mhm.
or lack of
Totally.
hesitation, because you're like, hey, I know those guys look scary with their plaid coats on and everything, but and their gold chains, but I get them and I
Yeah.
understand them. So yeah, cool. I'm glad you have. I mean, you did an amazing job at your old place.
Thank you.
But yeah, to learn new, and I for those of you not watching, I've teased Lindsay now that she's on the vendor side of things. She gets to get
Yes.
beat up a little bit by the dealers. So I'm sure that's been a new learning. So yeah,
Has.
fun stuff and a great journey. So we started this thing again. Our goal here on our channel is to educate, entertain, and encourage. So hopefully going to get some education out of this, maybe a little entertainment, but education, at least on what can be achievable, even as a young person. Lindsay's young and just working hard, getting into an industry, even that's hugely male dominated, and excelling. That's a super great story and a great model to show people out there. But so anyway, when we started the channel, and you and I talked about this back in the day, was it was going to be all automotive. So this would have been all conversations like this. And then we kind of morphed it into, well, there's not, again, since there's so few people, women interested in automotive and in the field, maybe now we're going to talk about what drives you in life. So that's kind of what these stories are about. Just stories that make people want to do better and want to be better. So, but I still want a little sliver of automotive. So I have a
Mm.
quick fire round, which is four car questions. So what was your first car?
Nissan Altima. I think it was a 2002.
2002.
It was
Okay.
white with blue interior lighting.
Mm,
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
What was the of you car? Well, and you maybe haven't owned as many, but we'll still throw it out there. What was your favorite car that you've had?
Well, I've only owned three, and I just bought my third car 2 months ago. Uh,
But you've driven
so
a million, so
driven a million.
yeah.
Well, my favorite car that I've owned is probably the one I have now, which is a BMW X3. I thought I was going to have buyer's remorse. I'm probably the worst customer. Can ask my friend who I bought the car from. He was
Yeah.
about done with me. um, and I thought I was going to have buyer's remorse, but I love it. So that's been great.
So that would be, okay, so current car is favorite car, so you kind of kill two birds with one stone. What's
Mm.
your dream car?
Um, oh gosh, I think a Lambo truck.
Oh,
I always say like a lot of cars don't impress me that much. Like I'm into them, I like them, but I think that truck is just the Lambo SUV is just amazing. I think it's so sharp.
yeah, they're pretty cool. Very cool. And they're fun. I still haven't, I told you my buddy bought one, a used one, a certified one.
Oh
He's,
yeah.
Eugene, if you're out there, if you're seeing this, you still owe me a ride in that car or that SUV.
Can you pick me up too?
Yeah, we'll scoop you up too, Lindsay. But mechanically, I don't know if I'd want to be footing that bill. So it'd have to be under warranty for sure, for me to want
Hmm.
to have one of those. Okay, so two more questions, and I'll let you go because I know you're busy. And thank you so much for joining us
No, this is
here.
great.
So what would you do? These are called words of wisdom. So I've had a
Okay.
couple people, I'll give you an example of what some of the people have shared. One of the words of wisdom was, these aren't profound. It's just what would you share with somebody else? His words of wisdom, this is an author friend of mine, just said, be nice. Be nice. Okay, great. That's a great principle. Another one, which Stan Windhorn, you know him, just begin, start, do something, do something. And so I've had a couple others. So what would be your words of wisdom to the world or the internet world, or to young Lindsay? What would be your words of wisdom just to encourage somebody?
I think my words of wisdom, and these aren't mine. I was told this by a leader that we worked with, but is to don't ask permission. Just do
Mm,
it. Just go for it.
I like that one. I'm writing it down. I kind of do it already, but
Yeah.
I'm keeping track for my for the listeners. Yeah, that's a good one. Don't ask permission. Well, again, you in your role and you had to make so many decisions so quick. Like, hey, should this campaign run? Hey, this person called in sick. Hey, across 10 different, basically 10 different businesses you were running, right?
Hmm.
That you could not always ask for permission. You just had
No.
to make the move and trust that. And I'm sure you had a lot of failures, but I'm sure a lot of them were like, okay, right decision, saved money, made money, whatever. But that's a big one.
Yeah. And it's important that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, that the people around you trust you to do your job, right? So
Yeah.
just with like learning the personalities and stuff, you have to prove yourself and show that, and I by working hard, work also another thing is just don't be outworked. That's what really helped me is nobody was going to outwork me. And you know, somebody told me to do something, I got it done instantly, and it was like, if they needed something done, they knew who to call. Um, so, it's just that built trust and credibility with my team members and with leadership. And again, being a woman, that's important because I don't think if I would have had that, I mean, if I didn't have that trust and credibility from, my other leaders and mentors, then I would not have been able to be successful and make those decisions. And, they trusted me that like, if I had to add, couldn't add tons of money, but if I had to add a couple $100 to something to make it make sense, that was okay.
Yeah.
As long as it made sense, but they trusted me to do that. So yeah, it's a big part of it.
Yeah. And obviously, you worked your way up many levels. You were there for 10 years. You left. They didn't fire you. So you did something right all that time
Yeah.
and continued growth. So yeah, that's a other great word of wisdom. Just don't be outworked. And that's why I tell
Yes.
people all the
Yes.
time, like, I go back to the story. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I first got in automotive, I was working for a weekly used car magazine, and we would shoot pictures and advertise, like an Auto Mart. Ours was called Auto Illustrated. But there were days we would work 24 hours straight, one day a week. So we would literally, it was our deadline day. So we'd work from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. because that's when the stores closed. And everybody wanted their pictures to be the last one in because the magazine's coming out in 2 days. And then we would work editing through the night, developing through the night, cutting out. I mean, this is old school, Linz. Literally cutting out, developing, cutting out the pictures, waxing them, putting them on a wax board, taking them to the printer. This is
Oh my
right
gosh.
before digital, right? Then we switched to digital. Then we switched to digital even for the no more cutting and pasting and copying and pasting all that. But yeah, and then we'd go home, literally go home, and I'd change clothes, and then I'd go out selling the next day. So that was been a cornerstone to me. No one's going to outwork. Just-
Yeah.
And that's a great lesson and a great reminder. Okay, so last question: who should we talk to? Whether it's with you on the interview with us, who would you like to see? Who would you like to bring on? Again, you're a founding sister in this deal, so I'm
Oh
hopefully have you
gosh.
back as a co-host. We've done a couple 3-person, and they work out pretty good.
Okay.
My daughter's done a couple, Stan's done a couple, so the one when like you and I know each other well, so this is fine and great, and people will get something out of this. But sometimes if you don't know that person very well, to have a couple co-hosts is a cool thing, especially from a female perspective, because you guys think of different things than I do.
Oh, I was not prepared for this one, but I should say you didn't prepare for any of these.
Yeah, no, this is free flowing, baby.
Okay, let me think. I mean, I don't know. My first person that comes to mind is our buddy John Kitson.
Oh,
He might be good. Might be the same-ish topic, not women in automotive, but
I
I
don't
gotta
need to
think
put you
about
on the
this.
spot like that, but
I know.
I'm
I'm
also
drawing a
thinking
blank.
of people that I might not that out of my circle of
Okay,
influence.
out of your
So
circle, that makes sense.
obviously, I have a list which I've shared some of that with you, like dream people, Mark Cuban, some of these people. Well, I think we got to grow a little bit before we get up to those folks, but they're all driven, right? And so,
Yeah.
again, back to our goal here of entertainment, encouragement, and education. There's not and I don't know how much time you spend on YouTube, but there's not a ton of channels that are just straight up positive, right? There's a lot of criticism, there's a lot of tear down, there's some funny ones, but we're just trying to be like, get on here, get pumped up. You could even use this to just fire up your week, on a Sunday night. I'm going to watch a couple of these videos and learn something. And that's our hope and our goal here on the channel. So think about that. We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, let me think of some people outside the normal circle here.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for
Thank
joining
you.
us and sharing your story and just showing what's available and possible for a young person, a female in a massively male dominated business. And you've done well. So
Thank you.
good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. We'll
Happy to
talk
be
to you
here.
soon.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.